Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday here on April 2nd. Spring is here, and I'm here in the Pacific Northwest. And it is a very typical Seattle rainy spring day. It's lovely, though. The tulips are coming up. Put in the chat where you're calling in from, what industry you're in, or what company you come from. Just want to know who's in the group. I'm so happy to have everybody here. We're going to talk here from policy to practice, the hybrid HR playbook, right? So policies aren't the most exciting term or word, but to me, in practice, it's incredibly exciting because when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" Well, we already have that in writing. We already have that official. I don't have to make that decision over and over again. Managers don't have to make a decision over and over again. It's all outlined, and everybody can then, as it says, turn your hybrid policy into high performance culture. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just looking in and who's here in the chat. I love we have people calling in from Canada, New York, just a little bit north of me by a couple hours in Vancouver. Love Vancouver, BC. Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming in and joining on this Thursday morning for me, or afternoon there on the East Coast. And let's go ahead and get into it. So this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to be using an iPad for the first time in one of these. So please give me your grace if there are any kind of hiccups or anything. I have been trying to get really good at the tablet with the pressure and things like that, but it is a new skill for me. So please work with me on that. But who am I? I'm Alex Grandy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Recognize app, or Recognize. It's an employee recognition and rewards app. It's essentially a way to gamify your company culture, promote your company values, help retain your top employees through systematic recognition, manager recognition, employee recognition, peer-to-peer nominations, nominating people for the Employee of the Month, Innovator of the Year, automating your anniversary program, even the first few months of service, like, hey, thanks for being here for 6 months, up to 60 years in our program. And believe it or not, cover all our bases. And all those can be monetary or non-monetary. And then obviously you can tie into international rewards. We have gift cards in Amazon in Canada, US. We have live events. And a little bit later on, when we get to the culture part of policy, we'll talk a little bit more. I'll give a little demo of what Recognize looks like. But I've been passionate about motivation and human design for many years. The kind of the corporate design of culture and working with psychology to do that. I have a degree in psychology. Actually, as an undergrad, I worked on 2 research projects. One of them did get published, and I've just been passionate about this my entire life, basically. So it's so great to be here, giving back and helping you standardize your hybrid policy. But just kind of a little bit about why we are here, right? We're here because everybody wants to have flexibility in their work, right? Everybody wants to be able to, or not everybody, but most people, I don't mean to be hyperbolic here, but I think a majority of people want to have a flexible work environment, right? And so you want to be able to take advantage of that as a corporation, as an organization. You want to be able to have people who flourish in remote work, people who flourish in hybrid work, and people who flourish in office, or maybe they have to be in the office, or they have to be a deskless employee, depending on the industry you're in. I have fantastic close friends who are brilliant. They can look at a credit card and then they can tell you the number, right? They're kind of that level of intelligence, but they don't do well in an office. They are better in a hybrid or remote environment because of just the personalities. If you want them to flourish, you can have incredible workers anywhere in the country or maybe the world, depending on your policy, your compliance policy and location policy. But you can be able to take advantage of top staff, right? So people want to work remotely, or at least partly remotely. But then by doing that, you have to really take into consideration your recognition program, how people have their home office, right? What kind of stipends do you give out? What kind of trainings are there? And most importantly, and what we're going to talk about today is clear hybrid norms, right? So being able to have written down what everything is. And so I'm going to help you with that today. So in this presentation, in this webinar, my promise is to give your company and your managers a clear hybrid leadership playbook so that you can start leading with confidence, and consistency is one of the most important parts here, and to help replace ambiguity with intentional rituals that create real, lasting bonds and shared expectations across your distributed teams. You want to be able to have a clear, actionable framework that connects your culture directly to retention, engagement, and high-performing outcomes. Okay, so I'm going to try to share my iPad here. So I'm going to go ahead and click share. Second. Awesome. So if you're not familiar, there's this concept called the entrepreneur operating system. I feel like a lot of times if you're not an entrepreneur, if entrepreneur is in the title, we just skip over it. Whereas actually there's a lot of great content, material that can help you connect to the leadership goals. The more you talk like a C-suite executive, the more you're going to be able to get the initiatives and projects you want to create, right? Because you're tying it to the way they speak, the way they think, and their goals. I ask people on calls all the time, what keeps your leadership up at night? That's something that you can affect. And it's so interesting. I hear so many different things, everything from compliance to new Australian law to performance. And then you dig into that. What does performance mean? Well, retaining my top performers. You often think about performance as the employee experience, making it easy to work, but just keeping your high performers is a performance tool. So the entrepreneur operating system is 6 parts. It's a lot simpler than it sounds. It's the company vision, right? Does everyone know, and is it clear the vision is? Do you have the right people in the right place? Do you have processes written down? Are you able to capture data? Are you able to get issues? I like to say feedback. I prefer the word feedback over issues. And then lastly, do you know if you have traction? Are you making work happen? Right. And so the vision, if you think about it, the vision needs to be communicated in those town halls. And if you have any feedback, this is where it's interactive. If you want to chat right now and throw out some ideas of how this plays into hybrid, I'd love to collaborate. But you want that vision communicated in one-on-ones, right? And ideally, you have some kind of visibility into whether or not your managers are communicating that, maybe through post one-on-one surveys with your employees. And then for people, you want the right people in the right place. And so, where do people work? Is it hybrid? Remote, right? And we're going to set policies around that. Process is super important, right? You need things written down in one place, right? So you want a knowledge center. Let's do KC, knowledge center, or a wiki, as we call it. Same idea, just it's a OneDrive, a SharePoint, a Notion, Coda, right? And then what is the data? Are you able to track data on the engagement of your remote staff, and ensuring that that traction is not just people who show up, right? Just because you can see them doesn't mean they're not getting work done. And so different ways of tracking traction that's based off of performance. And then lastly, how is feedback delivered, right? You want it to be, my Pencil Pro or whatever I bought keeps going to the eraser. You want to have it be systematic and consistent. And ideally, you have that psychological safety, redo that, with your team, with your managers, so that you can have those kinds of conversations. And so when you can frame your hybrid model that you need to be able to have a high-functioning company, and you frame it within the EOS, I think you can have some traction with your leadership. And another way of looking at this is, and we're going to talk about 8 policies, right? So let me just My notes. I can't switch it. I'm supposed to be able to see. Give me 1 second here. Just gonna skip that. No big deal. I'm gonna go back and share my screen. So in this conversation, let's see here. Oh, one of the slides must have been I must have been trigger happy, and I deleted the slide that is an index of all the policies. But basically, actually I can go ahead and go back and I can set that up. Perfect, I got it now. Right. Perfect. So, okay, so the way we have 8 policies that we're going to talk about in this call. And we're going to give you downloads for this. So you're going to get Excel files for each, Word documents for each policy. And I think of these policies as almost like a house. It's another great analogy for explaining things to people is that kind of house model, right? It's almost like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. What is built on top of what to create that employee experience? So it's almost like if you have a roof of your company, that is the employee experience, right? And what holds up the employee experience, but also holds the walls together? You have these 4 parts. You got DI, right? You have culture and values. You have location. Oh, back to the eraser. Why does it have to be so difficult? Location, right? Location policies. You have time off and boundaries, right? It's not okay to text somebody as a manager to employee at 9 o'clock at night asking where a document is, right? And also this ties into your virtual engagement as well. Virtual engagement. I'll talk about each one of these in detail, so I don't need to necessarily write these down. But then below that, you have these supportive functions. The manager expectations, and you have your onboarding, right? How things are onboarded, how your employees are onboarded. And I'm gonna go through each one of these again. And then lastly, it's like the plumbing or the electrical or the foundation. You have, your global policy or employment policies here on governance and compliance. So compliance. If you have anything to share around this, please go ahead and share how you think about it. And then, as I mentioned, the last one is the just general HR policy, of course. The handbook, right? Handbook. And so, I like to explain it like this because everything comes up to the employee experience. That's what's most important. And it's all, what is employee experience? Well, it's a lot of things. It's equity, it's diversity, it's where people work, it's the virtual engagement, it's the culture. And it all ties together into one system that works together. One part is not individual from others. Right. I got everything I think there. Moving on. So I want to touch on some ways to make this really easy for your employees to use. So the amazing thing now is the fact that the employee handbook isn't just some separate document anymore. So I want to show our, within our employee handbook, it's inside of our knowledge base, which also has a lot of other documents as well. A few webinars back, I demonstrated how I used Gemini, generative AI, to have a conversation around storing feedback about an employee. So when it comes time to performance review, or heaven forbid, a PIP, you go back into that AI. You can then get a summary of all the things that they've done that have been problems in the past, right? But by doing that in that prompt, I was able to show that it can push back on you. And the example I gave was my employee didn't get back to me within 4 hours. We have a policy of 4 hour, and what about that? And one of the things AI said was, well, when was the last time that policy was reinforced? But what's even now a step better is it's really not hard. And you look into this with your team, depending on where your knowledge base is stored. For instance, as you can see, this is Notion, as I've touched on, basically every webinar, this is our knowledge base. So I'm able actually to ask an AI that has access to all of our data, right? Our knowledge, our handbook, right? An employee didn't get back to me for over 24 hours. Is that appropriate? Yes, actually it is. Your policy is 1 day. So the manager thinks 4-hour policy, you have to get back to me within 4 hours in a hybrid environment. Well, actually it's 1 day according to the handbook, right? You may be even completely wrong. So what's so amazing is now today, the handbook more than ever is a living and breathing document that actually can be, prompted. I've been having a lot of fun with this chatbot. For instance, I've been able to ask it things like, what's the most important thing in our business, right? What's the direction we should be headed in? It's pretty crazy what kind of conversations you can have. And so I recommend checking that out. Figuring out how to tie in a large language model to your handbook. So again, the promise here is we want to create simple, repeatable systems that support managers, support your culture. We want to be able to reduce ambiguity and become a high-performing company, right? That can have people work from anywhere. So the first policy that was on the foundation of the house is compliance, right? Organizations must strictly comply with all local laws, state, national as well, labor laws, minimum wage requirements, overtime rules, mandated leave entitlements. No matter where people are based, you need to be able to have processes in place that classify employees correctly depending on where they are. I know if you, for instance, hire someone in Mexico, after so much time, even if they're a contractor, they become an employee, as I understand it, right? So you need, I think there's a company deal.com, I think they help you manage international compliance and law, but they charge a lot of money. So sometimes depending on how many employees you have, it's cheaper just to hire somebody to manage that. And also before an employee relocates or works remotely, they really need to communicate that and get formal approval. I will say that I am guilty of this myself. I remember when I was living in Texas, I went down to Mexico City, hoping that I could just work there and nobody would know. And the first day, my colleague David, who also has lived in Mexico City, he heard something in the background that's very unique to Mexico City. It's a sound of someone wanting to buy things from you, like used materials, right? And he heard it and he goes, "Are you in Mexico City?" First day I was busted. So there's no real point to try to hide it. You really should just be clear. The good news is if someone goes and works remotely for 30 days, even up to 90 days, it's low risk. It's really the 150 days where you're likely to have some kind of tax residency or compliance obligations that need to be looked into. And just to give an example of that, I'll just pull down the document that we have for that I'll send out after the call. Every document you see, I'll just let you know we're going to be sending it out. But it's a 3 or 4 page policy talking about the requirements that need to be set up. This is meant to be added to your employee handbook or a document within your knowledge center. And then, of course, edit it to be in line with you. And it goes over things like security, what employees have to do, what HR has to do, and so forth. All right, moving on to the next policy that we're going over, which is a lot more exciting, at least to me, and that is the company policy, the culture policy. So shared company values must be explicitly documented, right? You want concrete examples of how they are applied to remote teams and hybrid teams and in office as well. It's not just posted on a wall, but also it's in the daily workflow, what you do. So, you want to implement frequent structured recognition programs as well. Those will tie into your values, something like Recognize, which I'll give a demo in a second. And that can be accessible to everybody because it's going to be on their phone or in the office or on their desktop, right? And then you want to create these virtual rituals or virtual events that can accommodate all time zones and prioritize meaningful interactions. I remember one of our customers when they launched, they were international companies, so they did a 24-hour around the world event that was tied into a lot of things, not just recognition. But it was to reinvigorate the culture. And because they're international, they did a 24-hour consistent event. How cool is that? But you don't want to, backfire and avoid overscheduled, forced fun, so to speak. Instead, design for genuine connection, psychological safety, and shared purpose. So I wanted to go back and give another example of a document that you can create. And again, if you want to contribute anyway, I'd love to hear what your values are. I think I have an example over here. So I just before the call, I didn't have time to make it into an official document, but translating your core values, right? So one of our core values that I recognize is to be an exemplar, to lead by example, right? And so what would be leading by an example in a remote team? Well, one thing that we really care about is that you check the wiki. Don't ask questions first to people. The problem with Teams, the problem with Slack is I don't know how focused somebody is, right? So when I ping them, you got a second, I may be incredibly interrupting them. And it's very hard to turn off Slack. You can't put all the onus on them that they are turning off Teams or Slack to focus. So one of our lead by example, you don't hit up people asking for help. You check the wiki first to make sure it's not there. Now that we have the chatbot, we actually created a channel that's only a chatbot to our knowledge base. So people can ask questions publicly, not just privately, right? And then in person, I think we can tell, I love the knock, right? The classic knock on the desk, always knock before asking for help, right? And that's leading by an example. Transparency is not a value of ours specifically. Of course, it's important, but this is an example of if you're communicating, use open channels. The danger of remote teams is communications happening in these kinds of side rooms within Teams or Slack or Google Chat, and then everybody has no idea. There's times when one person will message one person about something, that person will message somebody else about that person messages person. We have no idea that we're all talking about the same thing. So create those, a habit of having open channel communication. So I love it if anyone wants to share any ideas on what they would have as a transparency for in person. One thing I like to highlight is you want to have in-person events for team building. You don't want to have to require people to be in the office to have their career progress. This is not a career progression kind of networking concept. In-person events are purely so people can work together. If you can't make it, that's okay. You can have regional events. You have to be pragmatic. There's also this idea where if you're having a meeting, people in the office stay at their desks on Zoom, right? So everyone feels equal in the call. I think that's a bit overkill to have that as an always policy, but maybe sometimes policy. If you're in the same place, you should encourage people to sit together in an office, in a conference room. That's my take. That's my hot take. I'm curious what other people think. If they believe that everyone should be at their desks for meetings, even if they're in the same office or not. I think it's a bit of a debate. So moving on back to the presentation. So that's a bit about your culture policy. Have a document, have examples of what culture and values look like. The next is equity and inclusion. I don't care what the federal government says. This is an important conversation. If you want a strong workforce, you're going to need to look to have a diverse organization. You're just going to have a better culture. You want people to believe in the values, but that has nothing to do with equity and inclusion. So you want to do that, you want high visibility projects, mentorship relationships, and promotion decisions must be distributed based strictly on performance and outcomes. I mean, duh, right? Never on physical office presence or manager proximity is really important, kind of a sub theme in this conversation. Meetings should be by default remote first, so that people, like I mentioned, we're supporting people who are remote, but I don't necessarily think that's an always rule. And then lastly, compensation frameworks must remain transparent and regularly audited to identify and address location-based pay inequalities. So that's also something that's a lot of work to do, but it's an important one. And as I mentioned, each of these policies does have a document, and some of them have questions, which we will go in and look at some of the more of the policies soon. But first, we want to do a poll for managers if we can. Let's go ahead and do that second poll. And actually, maybe we should do the two polls in a row because we weren't able to do the one earlier due to that slide hiccup. But Rue, do you want to do yeah, awesome. Yeah, so this is the first poll. Of these policies that we're covering today, which is the most mission critical to you? Awesome. Let's see the results. Yeah, I could have predicted that. I mean, definitely the most challenging part and most important is that global employment policy. Manager enablement, super important as well. Actually, yeah, let's do the next poll too, which is tied into manager enablement. So yeah, this is about manager trainings. We mentioned hybrid manager trainings, but if you don't do any manager trainings for hybrid and you just want to mention just general manager trainings, that's fine too. I'm just curious what people are doing for making sure that one-on-ones are consistent, performance reviews, focusing on performance rather than proximity. Are people doing trainings, buying trainings, or what are they doing to drive training or decision making? Yeah, look at that. Most people, half of y'all do not do any trainings. I love that 0% want to buy some kind of training third-party program. I think that we never get zero, so that's fantastic. Yeah, so then a lot of you have created your own curriculum. That's awesome. And that is interesting that 9%, 1 in 10 or so, you are just creating, you're hiring the right people. I think that's was a policy or is at Facebook where they just hire the best possible talent. Or maybe it was Netflix. No, it was Netflix. They just hire the best possible talent. It's very hard to get a job at Netflix. At least it used to be. And then they just let people make their own decisions. Let them do what they think is best. That's one strategy to go about. Great. Well, I love that. If you think about it, managers, I think of like a bike, right, where there's one spoke and or cog rather, and it drives a larger cog, right? So it's almost like your managers, when they're enabling the compliance, they're enabling the location policies and onboarding and culture, DEI, engagement, boundaries. That's like the manager in the middle, and then there's a larger cog is turning because of this smaller one moving at a slower pace, right? I really think of managers as that piece. So it's really important that we help them and we train them. So for the group that doesn't do any trainings at all, I would take a look at some of the other people in the group here. If anyone has any insights on how they are being successful with their trainings, please share in the chat. But essentially, managers must evaluate performance on objective outcomes, right? Not presence, not activity tracking, not micromanaging. We want to have trust in the operating system of these high-performing teams. We want to be able to have weekly check-ins, right, in those new or high-changing roles, or possibly bi-weekly for people who are more stable, or even once a month, depending on who they are. That kind of cog analogy, for every hour the manager spends with a direct report, ideally they're getting 40 to 80 hours of output, right? Teams must document their goals and maintain access to those. You want shared knowledge repositories. You don't want people to be using notepads to keeping their goals and notes, right? You want information equity across all locations. It's really non-negotiable. And that's why that shared wiki is so important in a hybrid or remote teams. Awesome. Next policy. Actually, let's take a moment to look at that policy. So let me share. Yeah, I'll pull that down. I can't remember, this is one of the ones that has questions. Yeah, so this is a manager enablement and expectations. So this would be great for anyone that doesn't have us already. What are the core principles? What are managers responsible for? Have a policy for one-on-ones and their cadence for, rules. Great, things like Whimsical. That's a really great tool, Whimsical. You can use an AI prompt to create a flow chart. So that flow chart can be a decision tree for how managers approach one-on-ones, which could go along with this. So again, don't micromanage. And the more documentation you have, the more the bot is useful. Okay. So, all right, moving on to the next policy, which is hybrid remote onboarding and offboarding policies. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on, I'm not sharing, let me make sure I'm sharing here. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but it's important that you have a set of rules for the 30, 60, 90 day. I think it's really clear. So one thing I like to do for that, another document that you should create, I'll go ahead and show you what I mean. So you're going to want to have something like this in your wiki, in your knowledge base. So, what are some examples of things that people should be doing? Let me just pull my notes up for that. Right. So one thing I think is, obviously minus 14, you want to be, order laptop, duh, right? Easy stuff. And then they probably don't, IT probably doesn't need to do anything after the first week, right? But I think kind of one of the things I like to think about is on day one, does the employee use an emoji, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. Do they comment, right, on something? And are they still doing that on the 30-day? One thing I've noticed is when employees are not that engaged, they're just not communicating on Slack. They're not commenting on people's messages or Teams, right? Depending on what you use. So you want to see people actually using it. You want managers to, have show them the tools they need, right? So what does this look like for you? They want to be proficient in the tools, self-reliant by day 30, right? If you don't already have something like this, each employee, it's going to be different depending on what they are for day 30, 60, 90. And this should be in the job description. Job description. They shouldn't have, there should be one document for that. I'm sure you can elaborate internally on what that means more. But I love it when the job description is the schema of what that person will do in the future. It's not a bunch of, the job description is not a bunch of fluff. I saw a meme recently and this person said, why does every job description sound like I'm joining some kind of elite, Navy SEAL team, or band? I'm joining a rock band. Like, why can't it be like, we're nice people, we're chill, come work with us? Why can't job descriptions be like that? So anyway, have something like that in your knowledge base, collaborate with your team to come up with what that looks like. And so it's very clear for everybody involved. Okay, so going back, moving on to the 6th policy. Right, time off, availability, and boundaries, all related, right? So employees are explicitly not expected to be monitored. They're not expected to be monitored, and they're not expected to be monitoring messages continuously, right? Or respond outside defined core working hours. After hours communication should be an exception. That's what I love about being able to click send tomorrow. I have friends on the East Coast. I may see something at 9 p.m. I'll click send this text message tomorrow. In Teams, I can send a message tomorrow. Right? It doesn't have to go out at 9 p.m. So after hours communications really should be an exception and not the norm. Employees are actively encouraged to take PTO. Here at Recognize, you have to take 2 weeks. If you take more, that's fine. We also take the week off, the last week of December off, because there's just not a lot happening then. I took that from another company I worked for, where they just let everyone take the last week of December off. One time, I was able to take a 3-week vacation to Costa Rica because I took 2 weeks off in December and then the last week, which was awesome. Still remember today, quality of life, right? So leaders should model that behavior too. I go on vacation as a leader so that other people feel comfortable go on vacation. Sometimes I travel and work remotely and I say I'll respond and I'll be part-time. Or other times I say I'm not going to be responding unless to emergencies for an entire week or so. So you should be able to, model that as managers, as leaders. And then lastly, as distributed teams, we want to define overlap hours for synchronous collaboration, rotating team times to share the burden of the responsibilities, right? And be able to deliver asynchronous handoffs through documentation, through processes, right? We have a team on the other side of the planet. And I don't really often talk to them on the phone. We chat rarely. It's usually through processes and comments that we're able to collaborate, right? Okay, next policy, rounding down the policies here. Hybrid work and location. Where do people work? And what are the communication standards? So you want to clearly articulate whether the organization is hybrid, remote first, as we touched on in the EOS wheel. Specify exactly how many in-office days are required, which roles, and under what circumstances there's exceptions that can apply. You want to establish explicit geographic boundaries for eligible work locations, define the formal process and criteria for approved relocations, okay? And lastly, specify which communication platforms are approved to use and establish concrete rules. Obviously, this gets harder and harder the larger you get, where some teams use Teams or Slack or GChat. The more you can rein that in, the better. And then communicate when responses are. Like I said, here it recognizes it's a 24-hour window. Obviously, it's actually suggested within a few hours, but it's not required. We also try to do no long form messages in our chat tool. Those go into an email or a phone call or presentation. Let's take a moment. I think this form here has some questions, which is fun to consider. Not really, no. No, this is another one where it's just another policy that you can set up that it was easy to paste in and start using it. Obviously, you always want to edit and sum down things or change things, but again, it just kind of outlines exactly what happens with PTO, and how that works, and where you work, and when are you expected to work. The more you have these as formal rules, the easier it is going to be for you. Okay. Let's go into the last policy. Awesome. Virtual engagement practices, right? If you come to a meeting and you never say anything, or your camera's off and you're muted, why are you there, right? So you want to define what that means. So when the manager talks to somebody about the virtual engagement practice, it's already clearly defined, and it's not a different conversation every time, depending on who the manager is. So organizations must explicitly define what constitutes active participation, what behaviors are not acceptable, such as being silent in meetings, or not acknowledging messages, or chronic lack of follow through. So clarity here is really important. Establish specific response time expectations for chat, email, like I mentioned, what is urgent, what is not urgent, right? And ideally, you can measure the virtual engagement, again, through things not just through who shows up in the office. So participation rates, like camera contributions, cross-team interactions, and frequency. That policy I know has questions, and we'll be able to, I believe, let's just take a look, since we still have some time. Yeah, so this one's nice because it allows you to actually answer the questions. I'll zoom in to show them here. So, and to some extent, the more you incorporate people into these decisions, like the company, the more likely they are to internalize it. One trick is you delegate something to somebody. Maybe they can't do it as good as you can. At least you don't think so. But because they did it themselves and they internalized it, the ultimate result will be better, right? And so sometimes some of these policies are great to collaborate, to get people's feedback on, what behaviors demonstrate active participation, and ask people what they think it is. Survey your team and ask, how do people ask questions? Yesterday, one of my teammates used the hand raise in Zoom. That should be a policy, right? That's a great idea. A way to interrupt somebody, or if it's kind of like a presentation style meeting that you have every week, to not break the flow of the conversation, raise your hand, virtually raise your hand. So again, a lot of great questions here that you can go through with your team, and define what burnout looks like, for instance, or what forced participation looks like. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for coming and going through those policies. We will be sending those 8 documents out after the call, as I touched on. I didn't get to a demo with Recognize at the manager component of the culture part, so I'll show that now. So here's an example of having Recognize within Microsoft Teams, for instance. But this is actually the website under the covers. So this is how it works in Outlook or SharePoint or a website or mobile app for Android and iPhone. The point here is to be as accessible as possible. You want everybody to have access to your recognition program. We also have a TV mode you can put up on TVs in your head office, in your factory floor, your logistics centers, that can showcase recognitions happening across the organization. They don't have to be just recognitions. They could be anniversaries. You can celebrate anniversaries and give your 2 cents, comment, emoji, give additional points to people. You can recognize, nominate, submit a challenge. So things that you've accomplished, and you can get points through that way. Then people could be showcased in the Hall of Fame for achieving greatness in your organization. It's all about showing your team what success looks like in your organization, and then be able to offer rewards. So you can offer rewards through this point system of things that you offer. We have gift cards in 150 countries. So here's an example of here in the United States. Or we have Amazon, or we have live events. So you can redeem concert tickets or sporting events. I just went to a Trailblazers game in Portland thanks to my tickets. Or you can even redeem swag. So there's more to go over. Recognize how we support managers and admins, and give reporting on the points and analytics on engagement, and be able to set budgets. So I'd love to show you more about Recognize. We do demos, a live demo, which I think actually I can mention is coming up. And I'll come back actually. Just want to mention the live demo. While I'm on that note, it is on April 28th, so in about a month. But you can always reach out to me or my team. Go to recognizeapp.com if you'd like to incorporate a digital recognition solution, an off-the-shelf solution with Recognize. But without further ado, I just want to mention, again, by taking these 8 components, you will end up having a fantastic plan for your hybrid organization. Seeing that the number one concern is that global compliance, we're going to look into having a future webinar on that topic, I'm sure, because it is the biggest concern of the group. And I think seeing that a lot of people design a manager curriculum, we'll be looking into how to help you design a manager curriculum in the future for people who don't already have one. So I'll just take a pause here to see if anyone has any questions that they want to ask. Go ahead and mention in the chat or raise your hand in the Zoom. Well, I hope I have answered everyone's questions or thoughts they had. The live demo, again, it's going to be really fun. Jess is going to be there. She's going to be doing a raffle, which is going to be really awesome. $100 gift card raffle, also $1,000 that goes towards rewards. So if you get started with us, we'll put $1,000 into the rewards credit. You don't have to put any money in initially to do that. The great thing about Recognize is there's no use it or lose it or anything. If anyone wants to redeem rewards or buy anything, you're not going to be spending any additional money than you would expect to. But thank you so much for everybody for coming. I'm also going to be doing a webinar next week, so 1 week from today. We're going to be talking about how to hire that people team that has the expertise in remote success. So again, part of that EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, is people. It's one of the key components. Having a great people team is going to supercharge your company. So we're going to go over that in 1 week from now. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to have you all. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. Happy Easter also. I know it's Good Friday tomorrow and then Easter Sunday. So have a fantastic long weekend to all you who celebrate Easter and also Passover as well. So thank you for coming. Please do reach out to us. It's really easy. Just Google Recognize. Just go to Google, type Recognize. You can find us on LinkedIn. Also type Recognize. I'm Alex at recognizeapp.com. Reach out to me anytime. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Either way, I'm there. And thanks so much for coming. Thanks, everybody.